everybody, it's that time of year again, and we are inducting people into the CARB Hall of Fame. And I am here with one of the class of 2012 to be inducted. That's Jay Lyle. Jay, it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, well, thank you.
Just let me start off by saying congratulations on being inducted into the Hall.
Okay, thank you very much.
Quite an honor. What spanned probably a 45, close to 50-year racing career?
Pretty close to it, I think. I don't know exactly the day. I started in '62, I believe it was, and that's when my big career started.
Like you say, in '62, you're more or less really a spectator at several tracks, and I presume you grew up here in the Warrensburg area. Is that true?
Yes. Actually, I grew up in Knob Noster.
Okay, just down the road.
On the farm, at Knob Noster. And then after my wife and I got married, we moved up here in Warrensburg.
You started out as a spectator, more or less, though, here in tracks in this area. And that would be tracks like Sedalia, Green Ridge, and some of the small tracks around this area. Marshall, Jeff City, places like that.
Yes.
But that doesn't last very long. It isn't long before you decide that, hey, I want to do this, and you end up buying a super modified, and you start out, which I'm sure was probably the class of the field back in those days, a straight six.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was just a Chevrolet six-cylinder. Now, the irony of it is that Rick Darling, Dad, is the one who actually got me started in that. At that time, I was working for him in his garage, and so him and I went to these races down at Green Ridge, and we had a pretty good time. So after we got back to Knob Noster, he said, "Hey, I'll buy a car if you drive it." And, we can go in pit to pit. Yeah. So anyhow, that's how it started.
That kind of makes it a little bit ironic again, too, because Rick's going into the Hall this year, too.
Yes.
And kind of having that history together kind of makes it pretty neat.
Yes.
Guys get to partner up again on going into the Hall.
Yeah.
The straight six only lasts a little while, though, and of course one of the big powerhouses, we might say, of that day was that Hudson 308.
Oh, yes. That I didn't win any races with that six-cylinder Chevrolet, but I won some heat races with the 308 Hudson at Sedalia and not Sedalia, but between Sedalia and Green Ridge. But over Marshall, I won a few heat races over there with it. But I think it was about the second or third year that I was in the racing that I ever won a feature. Yeah. So after I won one, well, I wanted to win more.
Once you got to feel that victory win, man, you wanted to do more of it.
Yes.
Tell me this, Jay, with those motors back in that day, and I think the six-cylinder and actually the Hudson 8 also, they were more or less torque motors, but not really RPM motors.
Yeah, that's correct.
So what you have to do? You have to gear it up quite a bit to get the speed out of them.
Well, back then they didn't have many quick changes around, and they were so expensive that you had a hard time getting hold of them. But you just usually had to find you a car rear end of some kind, and maybe run the transmission in second gear or first gear or something to get the ratio right. And you didn't want to wind them very tight, or they wouldn't stay together very long.
Yeah. In 1962, I don't know if you want to say make a big jump, but you kind of move up a little bit and you start to build your own car, and it's a offset, I want to say an offset roadster, but an offset sprint car, and with a V8 Mercury. Can you explain a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, let's see. Well, I didn't come up with the idea of the offset roadster or offset sprint car, because in those days Bill Lutz had one, and I think he had copied it off of Greg Weld, which was also running a offset roadster. They run them up at Knoxville, Iowa, and they had great success with them. So I kind of copied what they had, or close to it, and I tried to run at it the same thing as what they had. And of course, back in those days, you just built what you could, and as cheap as you could.
I was going to say, this was really before the time that chassis, say like a Trossel, or I'm trying to remember the guy in Wichita, and I can't remember, I'm having brain fade right now. But anyway, chassis where you could just go out and buy the chassis. You put these things together yourselves.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you used old parts, old rear ends and old front ends, you made your own car.
You were saying, you told me on the phone the other day about this car, was you could time in pretty good, but by feature time, you were going backwards.
Yes.
What was the difference? The tack of the track, or what made you the car do that?
Well, it was my car setup.
Okay.
Was what it was. Whenever I made the jump up into the big super modifieds, I know I was tooling around the track, and thought, boy, I am really going fast. And then about that time, well, Kenny Taylor, Walter Sorrows, Russell Hibbard, Roy Hibbard went by me like I was,
sitting still.
I was tied down, and so anyhow, kind of gives you second thoughts. Do I really want to do this, or what am I? This is going to get scary if I keep this up. But that was one of my first experiences that kind of really scares you, or something like that. But you keep practicing and you keep trying, and you get a little faster and faster each week.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's got to be an eerie feeling to be out there and somebody just flies by you like you're standing still.
Oh, yes.
And I'm sure it has to put a lot of doubts in your mind. Like you say, am I going to keep doing this, or can I improve, or what's going to happen?
Very true.
Okay, during the 70s, you are running 3 classes at 3 tracks. You're running a 2-barrel, I don't want to say B mod class, but B class. You're running sprint cars, and they have a square fuel tank. I'm not sure what the reason for that was. I'm sure you'll tell me. But also a stock car class, and you're running a 71 Chevelle. The stock car you ran for Darrell Witt, and the sprint car you were running for Mick Lamb.
Yes.
First of all, let's start off. What was the reason for the square tank on the sprint car?
Well, they called them super modifieds back in those days. Now, they also had sprint cars that they called sprint cars, but they had to have a sprint car tail on them. Now, this was mostly due to the fact that Al Sweeney, who was the promoter of the old IMCA type circuit throughout the Midwest here, that's what he required. If you run for him, you had to have a sprint car tail on it. But other places, you could run the square box on the back, which everybody called super modifieds. And I think even you couldn't run a sprint car tail in a super modified race. So what everybody they would change tails.
Depending upon where they were going to run.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that was especially at the fairgrounds when they had the fair races during the fair. Then Al Sweeney would run a super modified show, and then also at that nighttime show would be a sprint car show. So you'd have to take your tails with you, so to speak, to the racetrack, because you would just get one race over and then you'd go to the other type.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: Did both gas tanks have the fuel cell? I mean, were they pretty much in play by that time?
Oh, the sprint cars had a fuel cell in them, but most of them that had the box on the back didn't have.
Just a metal tank. Right. Oh my goodness! Wow. Okay. Anyway, during this time, you had to have been a busy guy. I mean, really, up until recent times, I don't remember too many people running 3 classes in one night. And there again, you were doing it at several tracks: Holt Summit, Marshall, California. And on a particular weekend, Jay, you have a lot of success in those 3 tracks, in those 3 classes. You win 8 out of 9 features.
Yes.
That must have been fun.
Oh, yeah. It was fun. And, of course, I think it was in the middle of the summertime when this was all happening. And whenever I would get through with the last race of the night, I'd be completely soaked and wet, And but anyhow, we'd always like to have a cold drink, afterwards, and which led to even more fun.
Okay.
Yeah, but the B cars, I think they called them. I guess they called them B class, but actually they were the super modified with one carburetor on it.
One two barrel.
2-barrel carburetor.
Boy, them things had to be more or less like a B mod nowadays. I mean, momentum, keep the momentum up.
Right. And so that was my own car. I built that one and raced it several years. And then, of course, the sprint cars, they belonged to Mick Lamb, and which was a great guy and a good friend. And so we would run it, and then also we'd run at that time they were called late models, which was Darrell Witt's late model. It was a 70, what did I say it was?
71.
71, 72 Chevelle. And we won a lot of races with both of those cars.
Now, the sprint and the
late model.
And the late model, okay.
Yeah. And of course we won quite a few with the B car too.
Yeah.
But that was a fun time. And
winning's always fun, isn't it?
oh yes.
Makes the party afterward a lot more fun or whatever.
Yes, it was. And of course I was a lot younger then too.
Yeah.
And it was stronger and had more endurance and everything. But yeah, as far as I know, I'm about the only driver that's done that.
Yeah, at that time frame.
At that time,
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I just happened to think about this. I don't have it written down. Did you ever run on the mile at Sedalia with the IMCA with guys? The ones I remember, Ernie Durr.
Yes.
And I'm trying to remember who the other one was in that that ran IMCA all the time, and I can't remember.
Raymore Scott.
Ramos, yes.
Ramos Scott.
You ran on the mile with them guys?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
that had to be a lot different. I mean, gee whiz.
Yeah, a lot of speed there.
Yeah.
Which, it takes some time to get used to that. But those guys were used to it.
Yeah.
Because they run the mile track everywhere they went, usually. And,
the Coin.
Yeah.
Places like that.
Yes.
One of the things I remember about that mile race too, seems like so much more than the half-mile races at that time, was the dust. They have, especially at fair time, August, they had enough of a hard time getting the track wet enough for the half mile, let alone a mile. So I can't imagine how much water it took. But was it a problem driving with the dust on that?
Oh yes, you had to gauge where you was at on the track, in order to make the turn, because with a lot of cars in front of you, that's about all you could see was just maybe the hood ornament on your car.
Okay.
And so
did you wear goggles? I mean, what?
Oh, wore goggles and everything you could find to try to
handkerchiefs.
Try to keep your vision.
Yeah.
But after you get on the mile tractor for a while, after you come out of one turn, you kind of start counting. And of course you can't see. You just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you got to a certain number, you said, "Well, I better start turning."
This must be the quarter I'll turn here.
Even though you couldn't see it.
Yeah. Okay, kind of hanging in that fair part of this racing. In 70, well, you're driving the 71 Chevelle, and I'm not sure whether 71, 72, and I'm not sure you remember it either. But you win the late model race at the state fair in Sedalia.
Yeah. Actually, that was a different car that I run. They called them early models.
Early models. That's right.
At that time, they called them early models. And I think I don't remember what year that was. Tell you the truth about it. But yeah, I won the state fair. show down there during the fair, and that was good.
Were this early model class, would there be anybody else that was driving in that we knew from around here in Kansas City, or like where you were racing here? I want to say Central Missouri, but I don't know if we're quite Central Missouri here. We're around Warrensburg.
I don't recall what whether there's any big names in that in the racing there or not. I know there were cars from all over the Midwest here,
right.
Kansas and Iowa and,
right.
and Illinois and Arkansas.
Yeah.
But anyhow, they had a good field of the early model cars.
I know the fair races in those years were really kind of the big deals for local guys, and like you say, they would draw in a lot of people from out of state. So it really was I don't know what we could compare it to today, probably like a big race that they would have at any of the local area tracks where, like you say, you get a lot of out-of-state competitors. 73-74, you are the points champion at Marshall and Jeff City. But 75, you decide to take a little trip and you head down to Florida, which probably was about the time that they first initiated a lot of these races that they started having in Florida during the winter, and I presume around February like they do now. But you take a little trip down there, and on the way you guys stop at Brunswick, Georgia. You have a pretty good run there if I remember right, but you head on down to Tampa, and for a 2-week period there in Tampa, you are running pretty consistently in your second or through fifth for this 2-week schedule, and you come out of Florida second in the IMCA points. And there again, this is in the sprint class, and you're running against guys like we know from around the Kansas City area: Rayleigh Goodwin, Dick Sutcliffe, Eddie Levitt, and I'm sure there were a bunch more. But man, that sounded like it'd be a lot of fun, and you really had a good run on that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Good. They also made a lot of videos of those races there that we're talking about there, and you can still see those videos on TV.
Yeah.
Sometime, I don't know exactly who runs them. I think Speed on TV, they run them every once in a while, and it shows us sitting in those old sprint cars.
Yeah. Old
going around there, and you even hear my name mentioned.
Well, I think that story I was telling you just before we started, somebody told me they were pitting for Chad or something. They were in the motel, and flipped the TV on, and somebody yelled at Chad, said, "Hey, your dad's racing on here." Yeah,
that's probably where it was at.
But it like I say, kind of the beginning of that. That was a new thing back then, wasn't it? Going down to Florida in February.
Yes, sure.
How did you get the time off? I know you've got your Western Missouri Medical Center shirt on here today for the interview, and that's where you work. How did you get the time off for a deal like that? Did you store up your vacation?
Yeah, I had always had plenty of vacation stored up, so. They were good to me, and they were till the day I retired. But I always had a lot of vacation stored up, and I could take it anytime I wanted to.
Yeah.
2 weeks was just 2 weeks then. So.
Was this still in a Mick Lamb Sprinter?
Yes. Yeah, that was Mick Lamb Sprinter.
Well, one of the other good things had to be about that was the racing season back then was probably over. End August? Early September, so you still had 3 or 4 months there to get the car ready to go on this trip.
Yes, yeah. We were running real good with Mick's sprint car. I think before we went down there and before the season ever ended, the year before, we went to Farmington, Missouri, which is now Peevely. And
I-55.
I-55, and we drove down there, pulling the sprint car, and we got there, and all the sprint cars had wings on, big wings on the back. Well, we had a big wing, but we had forgotten it. We had left it at home. So there we were. We thought, well, I don't know what we're going to do against these guys, but anyhow, we went out. We won it.
Without a wing?
Without a wing.
That's got to be unheard of because, man, them things add so much more downforce. Of course, I know they started out with fairly small wings in the beginning. They were not real wide, and but still, Jay, that's going to be quite a feat there, buddy.
Yeah, that was we was really proud of that win there.
You come out of this series, like I say, and you are second in the points in the IMCA sprint class. But, and I'm going to let you explain it, you don't run much more with IMCA, and tell me why.
Well, as well as I remember, I think we had motor problems. Of course, back in them days, I think we only had one motor probably. And it got to acting up on us. I don't remember exactly what was wrong with it. We were planning on running to Des Moines and on up into there, but we just couldn't get our stuff together. So that's as far as we went.
Give it up after that.
Yes.
Okay. During this time frame, you are running at the Nationals at Knoxville, and you do win a B main up there, which gets you into the A. So that's a big accomplishment. Because back in those days, I'm sure it's just like it is now. Man, that's some stiff competition. I mean, it is the Super Bowl of racing, and there are people from everywhere. They bring their best equipment. So to get in that A main must have been a pretty good deal.
Yes, it was. Of course, they didn't have as many cars then, entered as they do now. But that was. I think they probably had I know they had a C main also. So. But almost won the B main. Was that the one that I told you?
You said you won the B main at Knoxville and qualified for the A.
And then we went to Webster City, Iowa, and that's where I almost won it.
Yeah.
And as we was talking, Chuck Amati passed me, I think, on the last lap.
Yeah.
And another thing, I guess you knew Chuck Amati or something.
I have heard the name, yes.
Well, he was kind of a wild guy, but he was a good driver. While we were down in Florida, during the winter before, Chuck Amati was running up high next to the outer edge, and it had a board wall around it.
Yeah.
Well, he'd run around, right up as high as he could get. And so happened, I think he was ahead of me, and he hit the wall up there and run on the wall a ways. And then the car flipped over and rolled 2 or 3 times, Well, before the car ever stopped rolling, it did on its wheels, well, he was motioning for a pickup truck. Come on and push me. He didn't even want to get out of it.
Some of them guys were pretty tough, weren't they?
Oh yeah, he was.
Pretty tough.
He was. I always called him the one-armed bandit because he drove with a broken arm for quite a while.
Oh, did he? Okay. I remember kind of changing subject. Don't know if this is important, but Mel Kenyon drove, I think, with one arm for a while. He had an injury due to racing.
Right.
Also, at Burlington, Iowa, you said you finished third, but you set fast time at Burlington. Doing quite a bit of traveling during that time.
Yeah, we went to several different places. I think maybe we went out in Illinois and run at different places out there. Springfield, Illinois, we run there. Marion, Illinois. Then I think we even went out to Hubstadt, Indiana.
Oh, been there.
And of course, that's the home of the Kensers. So they were there. But I believe it was at the same time we were out at Hubstadt, Indiana in the early spring. And we got out there and we were getting ready to race, and it started snowing. So we did get out there and we run a heat race. But it was, everything was just slipping and sliding. But after they kind of got the heat races done, well, they just called it off.
Yeah.
Because the track was getting too snowy.
Yeah. Oh shoot. Okay. That I think maybe the springs were a lot colder. It seems like every year we start racing, even around here, earlier and earlier, early April, and pretty soon we're got a race at the end of March. But that's really early. 79 and 80, you are running sprints for Sylvester Bowman and Harvey Graves. Any special wins or anything that you remember during this time?
Oh, let's see, not too much. We done pretty good with Sylvester's sprint car. He bought one of the first, we might call a manufactured type sprint car, which was a CAE, they called them, CAE sprint car. And we put it together in his garage. And we run it at Topeka quite a bit. He always liked to run out to Topeka, Kansas. Well, I think we run the pair with it, and a couple of times, and I think we run it over at Marshall a couple of times. But I don't think I got some maybe seconds and thirds or fourths with it, but I don't think I ever did win a race of any significance.
80-81 starts bringing on a little shift here in your emphasis on racing. You decide to go late model racing, and you are running late models at Adrian, Nevada, Pleasanton, Bolivar, Lake Ozark, Jeff City, Moberly, Sedalia, and Warrensburg. Just a few tracks. But this is about the time it starts becoming a family affair for you, in that your oldest boy, Chad, starts running late models with you. First of all, that had to be a lot of fun. I can't imagine. I'd love to race with one of my boys, even if it's with go-karts. But to be out there running late models with your oldest boy had to be just a blast.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Sure is. Yeah, we, let's see, first, Chad, I bought an old car from Donnie Cooper, I believe, and of course he lived down in Sedalia, and we redone it. And Chad started driving it. It was a late model, actually. And we run to Springfield, and we run at Marshall, and I can't remember all the places we ran. Moberly, I think, with them. And anyhow, we had a lot of good times with it.
Let me ask you this: who got the best of that deal? Was Chad?
Well, at first.
Okay, tell us the truth, Dad.
At first, I was the one that was in the front. But then, after a while, then I was in second place, usually, because he caught on real quick. And he run good.
Just a year later, is this not correct? Then CJ starts running with you guys, and kind of what you told me, there were lots of nights wherever you were. Sometimes it was Lyle 1, 2, 3, first, second, and third.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we come out to Warrensburg here, and we. I won a few, and Chad won a few, and Clint won a few out there. And most nights we were 1, 2, 3, or something like that. And that was a lot of fun. But because out there they would give you I think this was when a guy named Mendoza ran it, and if you won 1 week, well, then he'd offer you a bonus if the top 4 cars would start in the back.
Oh, okay.
He would, I think it was 50, 30, 20, 10 or something like that, dollars more if you would start in the back. So a lot of those times we would start in the back of the field, and and come up through the back. And of course that was a lot of fun too.
I imagine this time racing with your boys created some spirited conversation in the race shop between the three of you, and of course having 2 young kids like that had to be fun.
Oh yeah, we had several discussions.
I bet you did. Okay.
And we enjoyed working on the race cars too. So that's when usually the discussions would start.
I was going to say, was this a lot like some of these 3-car teams we see on NASCAR, that you guys were sharing information, or did that not happen?
Yeah, no, we shared information to each other and tried to make each other go as fast as we could.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's what we did.
In 1990, you decided to try something else. I don't want to say get into something a little more modern, but something that was probably one of the top classes of the time. But you change over to driving a modified, and you win the first modified race at LA Raceway.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That had to be pretty neat.
Oh yeah, that was. That was an enjoyable time to do that. And the whites there are so, so friendly, and
Terrific track too. I mean, not only the ownership, which is really good, but it looks like a really nice track.
Yes, really nice track, and that was enjoyable to win that first race and see the track, begin and run and be successful.
Yeah,
that's what I liked about it. Anyway.
It's got to be one of those things that, actually if a guy had a sheet or whatever that you kept that, you could write down that nobody else can do it because it was the first race, and your name goes in the record book.
Yes.
As the winner. I'm going to move on up here a little bit on into more modern times, but from 2008 on through last year, you're running the street stock at CMS, which I don't know where you're going to be doing that at now, since I haven't heard anything more about them running. But more or less what you told me on the phone was, if I feel like it, if it's not too hot, if it's not too cold, or if I don't want to race or I do want to race, I just go do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I kind of enjoy it. I had to be racing every weekend, either 2 or 3 nights. As I've gotten older, my wife told me that I've matured.
Okay.
Finally. She said, if you don't have to run every night, well, there you are. You've finally grown up.
We might mention your wife. I know you lost her just here a few years back, but I think about women in racing, around racing, married to racers, and they have a lot to deal with. And then, of course, you've got 2 sons that were racing too, and that's tough on moms too. But Woman of the Year, CARB Woman of the Year, I believe, 2 years ago or last year, I can't remember.
08, I believe it was.
Okay. Yeah. That's had to have been tough.
Oh, well,
I'm sure she was an intricate part of all of it.
Yes. Well, that's, the disease that she had, we knew it was coming, and she did too. And that's the tough part about it. It's just not like if you, drop dead somewhere.
Right. Yeah, it's something she had to put up with and fight with.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But I've enjoyed all the, since I retired, I've enjoyed, all my extra observation of races and stuff, I've gone back down to Florida and watched the races down there, and several different places. I've gone to Ohio, Pennsylvania, went to Tucson, Arizona, and I've got a friend that she's a good co-pilot, and we just enjoy races.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done in the past, year or so, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. You were telling me that you cleaned out the basement here a while back, and you either gave away or threw away some 200 trophies, and you think that might only possibly be half of the ones that you won. I guess, and you and I discussed it a little bit, keeping track of all that really wasn't important to you, was it? It was just the racing.
Yeah. Never kept track of it. After a while, you get so many trophies, you look at them and you say, well, yeah, and you set them over here somewhere, and then you don't ever look at them again. And they collect dust, and eventually they fall apart. So you just kind of, keep shoving them back further and further. So anyhow, my wife told me one day, she said, why don't you get rid of these things? They're just taking up room, and they're trophies, and that's it. So that's what I did. I just gave some of them away and trashed some of them and cleaned out the whole basement.
Yeah. Jay, is there, I guess there's actually two questions I want to ask you. One, having raced for, we're going to say almost a half a century, been around it, been in it, had kids do it, what's more fun for you now? Or what's more fun? Or what was more fun? I'll get this right. Racing back then or doing it now, and having your kids race and you still participating when you want to. What do you think you enjoyed more, then or now?
Oh, I enjoyed then more because it was a competition.
Mm-hmm.
We were running better then, faster. Nowadays the competition is a lot stiffer. It's more money orientated. Where if you got a lot of big money and you can invest it in your car, then you're going to run faster. But these days, I just kind of like to run in the street stocks because it's fun. I enjoy it, and just to kind of have some competition sometimes,
right. Mm-hmm.
and enjoy the other drivers and the other car owners. And you can come home afterwards and say, well, okay, yeah, I had a good time, and maybe I'll run next week, and maybe I won't.
There's a lot of them out there that probably need to practice that more, but we won't go into that. But Jay, let me congratulate you on being inducted into the Hall of Fame, CARB Hall of Fame, and I know you've got a little list there that you want to tell us about some of the people that have helped you through the years. That we all know that to race, you got to have sponsors. There's got to be people that help you, and I know you want to tell us who some of them are.
Yeah, I sure will. I want to first thank Bob Libby for kind of starting all this. Him and my wife kind of got together, and they put their heads together and kind of started this to get me into the Hall of Fame.
Uh-huh.
And I sure appreciate Bob Libby for doing that. And I'd like to acknowledge, just first my sons, Chad and his lovely wife, Renee, and my other son, Clint, and his lovely fiance. And of course, and they helped me over the years, many times. Whenever, of course, we all helped each other. But and also Mick Lamb and his wife, Linda. They've been good friends, great friends over the years, both as a personal friend and as a dollars and cents man.
Sponsor.
Yes, sponsor, and a car owner.
Car owner.
Yes. Very happy that he's stuck with me so many years. And also Mark and Andrea Carter, which is, Mark has built me 2 or 3 race cars to drive, and I really appreciate him. And of course, Mark's mother and dad, Mike and Sue Ann Carter. I'd like to acknowledge them. Of course, Dave Hemme and his wife. Kathy. Dave has put a lot of bodies, the outer shell, on my race cars many times. That I've either bent them up or crashed them or something. So he's a great man and a real remarkable type, so to speak, body man.
Yeah.
And then also Odie and Gene Meredith. Odie was with me for several years, and he was a good pit man. He pulled my race car to different tracks He helped me with the maintenance on it, and just a real good friend. Acknowledge him, and his wife too, Jean. It was her name, and she's a real great person also. And then Darrell Witt. He was the car owner of the late model. I drove for him several years, and we won lots of races, both at Marshall, Sedalia, and even at the state fair. We run down there with his car quite a bit, and we just and also, let's see, there's some other car owners I need to talk about. Is a man named Walter Clear. I drove for him for several years, and he was an old gentleman that he raced around here many years ago, back whenever they run the old jalopies, they called him, and I drove for him probably 4 or 5 years. Also Sylvester Bowman, who I drove for him, and Merlin McCown from Sedalia, I drove for him. Also, of course, Chuck Darling, Ricky Darling's dad, was one I got started with. Acknowledge him. And another car owner I drove for was Harry Graves. I think I drove a year for him. Other than that, of course, I mentioned Mark Carter was a car builder and a good friend. And then I'd like to acknowledge my good companion that goes to the races with me, Sue Whitman is her name. And she's a real good friend. Other than that, I think that's pretty well.
That's it, huh?
The people that have helped me through the years, and I really thank them a lot.
Yeah. Well, once again, Jay, let me say congratulations on being inducted into the Hall, and I appreciate your sitting down with us and talking a little bit about your career.
Okay, yeah. I enjoyed it very well. Good.